guys, we are actually doing something a little bit different here today. I recently had a chance to meet Amelia Noël. She's a master certified coach and the creator of the Breaking Free from the Grind coaching program. I was so excited to meet her because we are both card carrying, high stress, high achievers. She's a Columbia Business School grad. I'm a Harvard Business School grad. She worked in investment banking and consulting. I worked in corporate strategy and consulting. And we actually both did our coach certifications at the Life Coach School, which means we both talk about this framework that's floating next to me: circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. We talk about that framework all the time. It's the main framework we use in our coaching. And we now both work with high stress, high achievers to help them break free from the grind of their careers and build their careers around flow. So we recently just had a really awesome conversation on her podcast about helping clients navigate the question of should I stay or should I go in their careers when you're feeling kind of stuck and stressed in your career and you're not sure whether the right move is to stick it out where you are or to pivot and find something else. Amelia was gracious enough to let me drop this episode in my feeds as well. So keep listening to this video and you'll get to hear our whole conversation. In this episode, we talk about the difference between a performance problem and a positioning problem. We also talk about why burnout clouds your clarity and how to get back to baseline. We talk about why ease and flow, not pressure and stress, are your greatest competitive advantages. We talk about what it means to build your career around flow. I hope you guys have a great time listening to this episode.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Free from the Grind. I am so excited to have you all here, especially so because this week we have an amazing special guest and fellow coach. Pooja Venkatraman is joining us. Pooja is an executive coach who helps high stress, high achievers build their careers around flow. And I know for a fact that everyone listening in to today's episode will benefit from what she has to say. So Pooja, thank you so much for joining us this week. So excited to have you on Breaking Free from the Grind.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself. So you mentioned you're working with high stress, high achievers. I know everyone in the audience relates to that in a very big way. And you specifically focus on helping them build their careers around flow. What does that actually mean? What is flow? What are you helping people with?
Yeah, absolutely. So most people are familiar with the concept of flow or being in a state of flow. And it's that feeling when you feel like you're firing on all cylinders and like time disappears, right? And you're just fully absorbed in the task and you're not only having really great performance, right? You're usually doing some of your best work when you're in flow, but it also feels amazing. Right? It's this incredible like win-win state where you feel really good while you're in that state and you also are producing like really incredible outcomes like while you're kind of doing that, whatever you're doing. And it sort of tends to play to your natural strengths, right? So it's like, I am not going to get into flow while playing a game of tennis because I am not an athletic person and maybe with enough practice, right? Like I could get there, but like I get into flow when I'm writing all the time because writing really kind of plays to my natural strengths. I'm a very verbal person, qualitative person, talky person. And I feel like as like a high achiever, right? I also am a high stress, high achiever. I went to Harvard Business School. I worked at Boston Consulting Group. I have been like part of this cohort of like people that really care about doing things as well as possible and like get stressed if they feel like they're not doing things as well as possible. That has been in my DNA for a very long time, as I'm sure it has been for all your listeners. And I feel like I really noticed, there's times when I'm achieving that really high performance from flow. Right? Like it feels really good. I'm not having to like use discipline or willpower, right? Yeah. I'm just like, I want to be writing right now. Like there's nothing I'd rather be doing than sitting here and writing or making this slide or building this financial model, like whatever it is, that kind of like win-win quadrant. And there's definitely been times in like my high achiever journey where I'm absolutely not operating from flow. I am like super stressed, super anxious, trying to get the best possible outcome, but like the fuel in the tank, right? Like the gasoline I'm pouring into the tank is this like, I'm stressed. I feel like I'm doing a bad job. I feel like I'm under a deadline. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I hope that what the heck I'm building is like what they're asking for, but like, I don't really know. Or even things like, why am I doing this? Like, this is so stupid. Like, it sucks that I'm like forced to be doing this right now. Like all those kinds of thoughts and feelings. That's what I call like the opposite of flow, right? And that is the like, that's the kind of gas that you put in your tank, which I would say is less sustainable. Right? Sometimes you can get really good short-term results if you're just like, I'm going to pull the all-nighter and like my boss like feels like my boss has a gun to my head, but I'm just going to get it done somehow. Right? Like that is so necessary sometimes, or it's unavoidable sometimes. Can't build your whole career around that feeling.
Yes.
You burn out
Yes.
pretty freaking fast. If like
Yes.
that's your normal day-to-day operating model.
Hmm.
And so I really kind of think about like, hey, I want my high achieving clients, I want myself to not compromise on the results, right? I want people to get those like A triple plus incredible outcomes and results that they're imagining. And I want that to be fueled by flow, right? Fueled by the thoughts
Yeah.
and feelings, like fueled that get like put the gas in the tank is like flow, alignment, playing to my strengths, purpose. I know what I'm doing here. I know why I'm doing it. Let's go. This feels so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the fuel of like, oh, like I have to do this. I should do this. People are gonna be mad at me if I don't do this. I have no choice but to do this, right? All that stuff, which like just doesn't often is not sustainable long term and often doesn't
Yeah.
even get as good outcomes as the sort of
Yes.
fuel.
Yes, we love this. And that's why I'm so excited to have you here this week because you are speaking the language of the Breaking Free from the Grind tribe when you're talking about creating sustainable success, results that are fueled by flow and not pressure or stress or burnout. And it's so true what you're saying that when, what is fascinating to see is that when we are fueling our careers from a state of flow, the results that we create actually have more pluses attached to the A than the
Yeah.
results that we create when we're fueling by pressure. I should do this. I have to do this. Is this good enough? So excited to have you here. Now, it's interesting because as you and I were talking about potential topics to cover today, what we landed on is this idea of really solving for the question that a lot of burnt out, high stress, high achievers face, which is how do I know when it's time to make a change in my career? Should I stay or should I go? And, a lot of times when someone, a high stress, high achiever is faced with this question, it's because they're not feeling a lot of flow in their career. And so then suddenly we're in this place where we're questioning if I should actually be here. So when you think of your clients and, the people that you're working with, I'm really curious, what are the biggest challenges you see your clients facing when they're contemplating, should I stay or should I go? Contemplating if it's time to make a change in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the, first of all, it's such a common question that people run into and it's so like challenging. And I feel like I talked to a lot of people where they're like, I didn't even know anyone else was facing this. And I'm like, this is probably the most universal question that I see people facing. And like, nobody wants to talk about it, right? Because high achievers don't want to tend to put their non-high achievements like on
Yep.
blast
Yep.
publicly. But I'm always like, you are not the only one. This is an incredibly normal place to be. Some of the challenges I see people face, I think one is like, like when you're really fully burnt out, right? Or like really kind of in that crappy headspace, I feel like your burnout self is like, is different from your non-burnout self, right? And like your burnout self doesn't necessarily like have a clear sense of this is my purpose, this is the work I love to do. Like sometimes your burnout self is like, actually, I want to quit my job, like be a barista at Starbucks and like travel backpacking. Right. And like that version of like what your brain's really telling you there is like, I need a break. I need to rest and I need to like do simple, achievable tasks and rebuild my confidence.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Your brain
Feel
is
like
not
I'm checking the boxes successfully.
totally right.
Yeah.
But like, and so sometimes people will mistake that for, oh, I've actually lost my ambition, right? Or like my values have like meaningfully changed. And a lot of times, sometimes your values do change, right? And that can happen too. But especially when people are like, hey, this is the like high trajectory I've been on. And now my brain is telling me the next step is this like very, very different, much lower trajectory thing. I'm normally like, okay, let's see if we can kind of clear the burnout out of your system first, because then I think like your real self will come back online and then you can make decisions about what to do. And so like if people can swing it, taking like a vacation, a sabbatical, whatever break program that your company allows you to take, or just using your vacation days, something to really just like get that sort of built up fight or flight like out of your system and just come back to baseline. I think that's the number one thing. If people can possibly swing it, that's so valuable. And then once that has done or is like has kind of gotten in progress of like, okay, just I've gotten some of the burnout out of my system and like my real self is back, right? Or at least partially back and can think about things. Then I like to help people think about like, one thing I like to think about is like performance versus positioning,
Mm.
right? And thinking about like performance is basically like everything that's in your control, right? Where it's like, hey, how hard am I working? Like, how smart am I working? How am I tackling the problem, right? Who am I bringing in? What phase am I bringing in? Whatever, right? That's all performance. And then there's also positioning, which is like, am I set up to succeed, right? Like, have I been given a high priority project? Am I included in the meetings I need to be included in? Am I like, are my skills like, and my contributions valued by the culture of this place? Like all that kind of thing. And I would say like the positioning stuff is like, you can influence it, but like often it's out of your control. And I like to kind of help people distinguish, am I having a performance problem or am I having a positioning problem? Right. And like a lot of times when you're positioned poorly, you will look like you're having a performance problem. Right. Because it's like, oh, that's so weird. I worked super hard, but like that initiative didn't get over the finish line. Right. Like that looks like a performance problem. It could also be a positioning problem though. Right. Of like, oh, you were not given the resources that you needed, or like company priorities were just not like aligned to your initiative. Like your thing was never going to get prioritized. It was never going to get done, or whatever it might be. And what I see with like high achiever, like the high achiever psychographic profile is like, when you do badly, you want to get back in there, double down, work harder, and like make it work the second time. Right. Which I think is so admirable. It's like an incredible character trait of like my clients, but in this whole audience, but it can lead you down like an unhelpful kind of dead end. If it's like, if it turns out you actually have a positioning problem, right? Because if you have a positioning problem, don't double down and give even higher performance, right? Step back and be like, oh, my work isn't aligned to corporate priorities. I'm being chronically under-resourced. I'm not in the conversations that actually influence this, right? Or like, hey, I bring this kind of skill to the table and this company values these skills. And that is what it is, right? And I'm not going to like, the classic example of like, oh, engineers are first-class citizens at Google and like non-engineers are second-class citizens. And so if you're the best ever like ex-consultant, slide maker, business strategist at Google, may not matter, right? Because like engineers are just like, their opinions are considered more valuable, right? And that's just a positioning problem. And so I think distinguishing, if it's a positioning problem, I need to think critically about what can I do here to get positioned better? Or is this a place where I can't find the right positioning? And so I now need to go to a different place where I can be positioned better. But it doesn't tend to occur to high achievers that way, myself included, because they tend to just be like, so tell me how I can work harder and get the A like next, versus like, how am I not being set up for success?
Yes. Okay. So great questions to ask if you are recognizing you're having a positioning problem, and that's really the source of challenge and frustration. If you're working with someone and they're realizing that they might actually be having a bit of a performance issue or performance problem, how would you help someone in that category solve for what they're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll bring this in a little bit too with the like, should I stay or should I go kind of piece of it as well. Because I think I like to kind of think about it as like, which mountain do you want to climb? Right? Because it's like you can stay here and you can climb the mountain of improving the skills that you need to improve on to be successful here. Or you can climb a totally different mountain, right? Which is like, I'm going to go to a place where my quote unquote like weaknesses are actually not relevant and I can just double down on my strengths, right? And both of those are like equivalently difficult mountains to climb. And it's a little bit about choosing which one you want to go down. And I'll say as a caveat for all this, right? Like, I think this whole audience and like my clients, your clients, they're not the people where it's like, oh, you're not responding to your emails. You're not getting your projects done. You're not getting basic, right? Like this is not the population we're talking to, right? Where it's like the basics of performing well at your job. I'm sort of assuming, because I think it's true, these are all folks where it's like you are like a high performer and a high achiever. And now we're sort of like, we're working on that, like that next level of like, I'm getting an A, but I want to get an A plus. Or like, weird, I'm getting a B plus and I'm not a person who gets B pluses. So like, let's figure out what's going on here, right? So I'll kind of put that in context, because this conversation is very different when you're talking to someone and it's like, hey, you should like take ownership over your responsibilities.
Yes.
Do the work. That's not what we're talking about here, right? So when you're in that like A to A plus, or like, hey, I'm getting a one-off B plus, that's really weird. What do I need to do to like correct here kind of situation? Sometimes it's a matter of like, hey, there are skills I need to build in this particular role that I'm just not as strong at, right? And so like I was in a position in one of my jobs where I was coming in as an ex-consultant. My like communication, problem solving, slide making, frameworking skills were like so freaking good, right? And then my like performance review at the end of the year, the development areas was basically all about like, how do you execute inside a large corporation? Right. And it was like, hey, your presentations are amazing. Your executive presence is amazing. Your communication is amazing. But like your stuff didn't ultimately get prioritized in the tech roadmaps. And so like, that's the thing you need to figure out, right? Is like, what are the alliances you need to build? How do you need to scope your work differently? Like you just kind of have to learn how to navigate this organization super effectively so that like we at the end of the quarter can say Pooja's initiative is like being worked on by these 5 engineers and has hit milestone number 25 or like whatever it is. And none of those people report to you. So this is like a full on like influence alliance building game that you have to kind of navigate. And also just understanding like, how does this organization work? Like when are tech roadmaps even prioritized? Like what meeting does that happen in? You got to get in that meeting and figure out how to present in it and, all those things. And so that was a moment where I could have either said, okay, that's a different skill set than the one I have. Time for me to like really figure out how to build that skill set and work on that. Or you can do what I ultimately chose to do, where I was like, I don't know that I'm super excited about building that skill set, right? Like, I don't know that like navigating large organizations in order to get my particular initiatives prioritized, which is a super valuable skill, right? Like any product manager, general manager, that is like a lot of times one of the core skills that they have to build. Super important skill. I was just like, I don't know that I'm super excited about building that skill. So I'm going to climb the mountain of like, what's the job where I can just double down on everything in the strengths column, and that will like create the value for whoever I'm working for, versus choosing the mountain, climbing the mountain of like, oh yeah, this is a totally different set of skills that I need to go.
I need to start building. Yeah. And I love how you break it down too within this performance bucket, because our brains love to over exaggerate. Our brains love to think in extremes. And you make such a valid point that for people that are normally used to being high achieving and getting straight A pluses, if you get a B plus or even an A minus in some area of your career, a lot of times that's when our brain can go to the place of like, well, do I even belong here? Or is it time to leave? Versus really just objectively taking a beat, calming down, looking at the full picture of like, this is a small quote unquote weakness that you can improve on. We don't need to make a drastic career altering decision. Versus if this is something where, okay, you're looking at the skills that you have to develop or that you would need to develop, and it just doesn't feel aligned with you. It just doesn't excite you. It's not something you want. Then that might be a time to consider, well, not from a place of, not from a reactive place or from a place of fear or shame, are you making the decision to try something else? It's actually from a place of, well, I really want to double down on the things I'm already good at. And that's such a healthy place to make that decision from. You talked about, you use the word like bringing yourself back to baseline when you were talking about, there's your burnout self and then there's your best self, right? And the way that I talk to my clients about it is very similar in that we don't make our best decisions from burnout when it comes to our career or our life, right? And so, you were saying bringing yourself to baseline. I talk about it in terms of getting yourself to neutral and how neutrality can be a golden emotion. So, how would you help someone who is coming to you from their burnt out self and saying, hey, I think I want to get out of here. It's time for me to make a change. I'm thinking it's time that I should leave. How do you help them solve for just getting back to baseline so that they can make the best decision for them and the most aligned decision, the most inflow decision from the place of baseline or neutral?
Yeah. I think I have a couple approaches. So one is like if someone has been able to carve out some time to take a break, like how to use the break to get back to baseline, and also talk about like if you're not one of the lucky few that gets to take a break, which is also very common, like how do you try to do it even while you're working? I think like when it comes to if you're actually getting to take a break, the thing I tell people is like your system knows what it needs to get out of burnout. You kind of just need to like follow the intuitive thread of what your system wants to do today and keep following it, right? Because the thread might kind of twist and turn throughout the day, but literally, and this can be really scary for high achievers. I think high achievers are very good at like being given a plan and executing the plan. And they're maybe not as good at just like do what feels organically good in the moment. Because they're like, that's self-indulgent, that's lazy, that's complacent, like, et cetera, et cetera. But so I sometimes will tell people like treat it like an experiment, right? And you can like go make a structured plan for your day and follow it after you run the experiment if you really hated it. But let's just like run an experiment and let's just like see with curiosity, like what do you do when you sort of like let the leash go slack like on yourself and you're just like, we can actually spend the whole day like exactly how we want, but we just kind of have to stay alive to our own internal signals, right? And so if like you start the day and you're like, what I feel like doing is watching Netflix in bed. Right? I'm not even gonna get out of bed. I'm not even gonna brush my teeth. And then you do that for 20 minutes and then you're like, now I'm getting bored. You have to kind of follow the thread. Be like, okay, now I'm bored. What do I feel like doing now? Oh, I feel like getting out of bed and like putting on a playlist. Okay, and now I'm feeling like doing this. Now I'm feeling like doing this. So it's just like really continuing to trust yourself and see like what your kind of body and your brain feel like doing. And again, for this high achiever population, these are not folks that like want to just spend like 18 years sitting on a beach with a margarita, right? Like there's something inside you that loves to like do things, make things, like think about things. And so you might be so surprised, like even if you're just sitting there watching a murder mystery show, like on Netflix. This was me this weekend. I was watching a murder mystery show and my brain was cataloging. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing all the references that they're making to like the murder mystery genre, like as a whole. Like they're making an Agatha Christie reference and they're making a Knives Out reference. And like, oh, this is like some of the tropes that they're playing with. And like, this is so fun. And I was also thinking about like, I was making like a coaching metaphor. I was like, you know, as I'm watching the show, I'm so hungry to figure out like who did it, right? Like who's the murderer. But then like the reality is like, you find out the murder and you're just like, okay. And like the fun part is the journey. Like the fun part is like, oh, like now I think it's this person. Wait, now I think it's this person. Wait, there's like another clue. And I was like, oh, like what a metaphor for like life, right?
Yes.
I'm so eager to get to the end. But like actually the fun part was the journey. And it would actually be very unsatisfying if you like episode 1, first 10 minutes, they're like, the killer is blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You'd be like, what the hell? That sucked. So anyway, I give that as an example of like, that was me in my downtime. Right? Like I was not trying to like come up with an idea to like share with my audience or anything. My brain just organically came up with that like in its downtime. And so I say the same thing to my clients when they're taking a break for burnout, where I'm just like, really like experiment with trusting yourself. Experiment with trusting your brain. And you might be surprised how much sort of like organic desire to do things and think things and have goals and have ambitions and have ideas exists within you that does not need to be forced out or like you need structure to come out or any of that stuff. It's like organically bubbling within you. So just like follow the thread, let your system do what it wants to do. And that's usually the quickest way to kind of get burnout out of your system if you have a break.
I love that.
If you don't, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I love especially the following the thread, because yeah, to reiterate what you're saying about it being really scary for someone who is a high achiever and of that mindset, there's also the element of like, but I want to have the best sabbatical or the most, it's like I want to do the right things so that I solve for this, and really realizing that there is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's a big experiment, like you said. And when you're following this thread, like you could actually follow the thread in 7 different ways based on, how you're feeling or the multiple things you're feeling. And all will get you to the place that you need to be, where you're at this more baseline, more emotionally neutral place. And so I want to reiterate to everyone listening in that it's okay if that feels scary, or if you feel some fear or some uncertainty, like, am I doing this right in the beginning? Because that's normal, especially for those of us who operate in corporate environments where we're very used to being told exactly what's expected of us, or what to execute. That experimentation piece can feel scary, and that's okay. You're right where you need to be.
100%. There was a great, I was at the Women's Leadership Summit at Harvard Business School late last year. And there's a great professor named Amy Edmondson who studies failure. And she does like an exercise with HBS students where she basically is trying to get them acclimated to like productive failure, right? And she's like, these kids like cannot handle it, right? Or it's like so against their nature. And the exercise she has you do is like, there's a mat on the ground with a bunch of gray squares, right, on the mat. And you can like walk on it, you can step on it. And the point of the mat is like some of the squares, when you step on them, they beep, and some of them don't beep. And you have to, and there's like a start point and an end point, and like you as a team have to figure out what is the like no beep pathway from start to end, right? There is no, like, you can't think about this ahead of time, right? There's no planning, there's no roadmap, there's nothing to execute. The best thing to do is literally like walk every square on the map.
Yep.
Just walk every single square and then like
beeped at.
Yeah. And then like put a post-it down for everyone that doesn't beep. And like probably in like 30 seconds or like 90 seconds, depending on how big the map is, you can so quickly just figure out what the pathway is if you just walk every single square. People don't do that. People will stand on one square and then they'll like ask their team. They'll be like, which square do you think I should step on? It's like, nobody knows. Like there's no information to be gained. And then they'll like step on a square, and if it beeps, they'll be like, oh my gosh, oh, sorry. Right. And if it doesn't beep, they'll be like, oh, okay, good. Right. And they'll just like, they'll attach their self-worth to like whether or not the square beeps. Yeah. And you're just like, no, that doesn't make any sense. You didn't make a mistake, right? Or you didn't get it right if it didn't beep. And actually, what you need to do is you need to get maximum beeps. You need to
Yes,
hear like, yeah, you need to go hear
fair
100
enough.
beeps so that you can find the 20 squares that don't beep. And then like, that's actually winning, right? Like in this
Yes.
scenario. But of course, like high achieving people, they tend to want to hang out on the one square and then just kind of be like,
Yes.
can someone please tell me? Can I talk to more mentors? Can I get more advice? Can
Right.
I read another article? Can I like blah blah blah? Which square isn't going to beep? And it's like you're walking your own life mat, right? Like no one can tell you. But if you just get out there, you'll quickly realize the cost of beeps is like very, very low, right? Like just try, just like try
Yes.
and see what happens, readjust, etc. But it's a lot of what I help my clients do when we're figuring out their next career step. It's a very like experimental approach. And we talk a lot about like what are the fast, low cost, low risk experiments so that you can quickly like tap a bunch of squares and see like which ones beep and which ones don't.
Yes, so good. I love that. I can imagine, like in my own head, as you were talking through that, just someone standing on one square, paralyzed, wanting to do it perfectly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And doing everything else, talking to mentors, doing research, overthinking, instead of just taking the step and seeing what happens. So true. What about for people that might not have the luxury of having a sabbatical or time off that their company gives, whether it's for mental health or just for breaks, what are some tools or some tips that you would offer to them to help them navigate this question, should I stay or should I go?
Absolutely. So the thing I talk to them about is to say like burnout is not caused by your circumstances. It's not caused by the hours you're working. It's not caused by that nasty email that your boss sent. It's not caused by the conflicting directions you're getting. It's not being caused by your circumstances. Your burnout is caused by the thoughts and feelings that you are having about those circumstances, right? It's caused by you being like, I can't handle this. They're so mad at me. I'm progressing slower than everybody else. Like, I am so lost. I'm so confused. I don't know what to do, right? Like, those are the thoughts that are actually creating burnout. And I've had the experience in my career where it's like some of the jobs I worked the most hours and like had quote unquote the hardest circumstances were some of the best times of my life because my
Yeah.
thoughts were like, I'm doing a great job. I love working with this team. We're adding so much value. Like, oh, I like I'm having such a great time, right? And then I also had times in my career where, like, from the outside, I was working very little, like, very chill, setting my own deadlines. Like, everyone's just like, yeah, do whatever you think is best, right? Like, the classic, like, there's no excuse to have burnout in that situation. But I did get burnt out because my thoughts were like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel really directionless. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. Like, what is this connected to? Right. And so those thoughts and feelings created a sense of burnout. And so really kind of honing in on like, what are you thinking and feeling during the day that is causing your burnout? And then let's start to adjust some of those thoughts and feelings and maybe some of the like mental models and sort of more foundational assumptions in your head that are kind of bubbling up into those day-to-day
Mhm.
thoughts and feelings. Let's make some adjustments there. And then as we do that, I feel like people start to kind of tease out, hey, this is the part of the problem that's a me problem, right? Like this is coming from my own approach to the world, which is going to be the same if I go to another job. So I might as well start working on it here because I'm going to have to work on it over there as well. And then it also helps people tease out, oh, this is the stuff that's like a this job problem, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
oh, I have to spend 50 hours doing research on crypto. I'm super uninterested in crypto. If I work in another job, I'm not going to have to do 50 hours a week
Yeah.
crypto. Cool, right? Like that's a job problem 100%. I'm not going to recreate that for myself somewhere else. Versus the narrative of like I'm so bad at this, like what if someone's mad at me, like that piece
Hmm.
doesn't come with you. And so like
Yes.
I love that process of like it brings the burnout down and it helps you kind of crystallize this is the piece I have to keep working on and kind of build conviction around like this is the stuff that's really localized to this job and I can just decide whether or not I want to like climb the mountain of dealing with it or climb the
Yes.
mountain of finding something else.
I love that. What you're saying, I feel, is the key to everything. I know you and I came from the same coaching school, and so we're very much aligned on this philosophy that it is your thoughts and your feelings about your 80-hour work week or about your boss that determine, or your difficult client, right, that determine the level of burnout you feel. Because similarly, it's like when I was working in investment banking, working 100 hours a week on the regular, those were some of the quote unquote best times of my career because I felt like I was doing something meaningful, like I was excited to be there. And 100-hour work week can feel very differently based on how you're choosing to think and feel about it. Similarly, what you're saying, I've had people come to me that are working 35 hours a week, but are feeling incredibly stressed and burnout because of how they're thinking about those circumstances. And I think that's a really big aha for a lot of people prior to them, being exposed to the coaching world that, oh, it's actually not my boss or my client or my project or the number of hours a week I'm working. It's how I'm choosing to think about that and feel about that. And the beautiful thing is we always have a choice, right? Like you're saying, if you're spending 50 hours a week researching crypto and that's not a passion area of yours, guess what? You get to make the choice. Do you stay or do you go? And that can be so much more empowering than just feeling we're a victim to our circumstances and where we're at. So good to hear you talk about that. Is there anything else, again, when you think about the clients that you work with and those that you've really, really helped when they've been faced with this question of, is it time for me to make a change? Or should I stay or should I go? Are there any other tips or pieces of advice that you would give someone who is noticing that question is creeping up in their mind a lot, other than what you've already shared?
I feel like I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think the other one I would say, besides kind of what I've talked about, is really, I think another thing I see people running into is they will like, if something feels easy, they're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, that can't be that valuable. Right. And they tend to gravitate towards like what feels difficult, what they're not as good at. And they're like, that's what I have to improve. And like, by the way, that's just how I know I'm adding value is like if it's hard, right? If it's
Hard.
difficult.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a phase of your like, academic and professional career where that approach makes a ton of sense, right? Where you're building foundational skills. You don't like really know anything yet. And so it's like, yes, like learn the basics of math and like geometry and science and like how to do this job on a basic level and just be a professional. And so there's a while where like potentially everything kind of feels a little hard because you're just doing it all for the first time. And then I feel like there's an inflection point in your career where it's like you've gotten past like level one of just like work hard, like bring your like non-skills, like bring your improvement areas like up to baseline or like improve on them a lot and kind of like and like perform well, right? Like that's kind of level one. Once you like get to level two and you kind of finished level one, now it's like everyone at level two works hard, is like committed to like improving their areas of development, is like has grit, has resilience, like all of those things that you also have that you've developed at level one. Now the competitive advantage at level two is playing to your strengths, and it's like doing what actually feels weirdly easy to you, right? Where you're just like, you come to a meeting and you just see, or like you see a situation, you're like, oh, this is obviously what we should do. And here's the next step that I would do. And everyone else is like, how did you know that? Right. And you're like, oh, did you not see that? Like, I just saw that. Like, that was so obvious to me that that's what you should do. And people will tend to discount that because they're like, I didn't really do anything. Like, I just like, what do you mean that like is my job or like is what I should like build around? And I'm always like, no, that is your competitive advantage, is the fact
Mm-hmm.
that that comes easily to you, right? And like for
Yes.
me, it's sort of like qualitative analysis and like being verbal. For someone else, it might be quantitative analysis. I talked to someone once where it wasn't them, but it was their partner who had like worked in VC and also like loved to play poker on the side. And like their thing was like essentially like gambling, right? And like really being good, like really, really good at like placing bets and knowing how to think about placing bets, right? That was like their core strength. And it showed up in like their professional life and like in their hobbies too, right? And it's like, he probably is like, oh, gambling is not like a thing. Like, it's just like, it's so easy. Like, don't you, of
Yes.
course, this is how you like, this is the amount that you would invest and this is how you would structure it. And this is who you bet on and this is who you don't bet on. And it's like, no, that's a superpower. Like, that's easy. That's a superpower. And like, you should lean into
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think that's the kind of last thing I think about is like, I think high achievers, because they're so kind of wired to like work hard, be disciplined, like improve on the areas of development, et cetera, tend to discount like,
Yes.
oh, it's easy, it's fun, it's like the answer just shows up in front of my eyes. I don't even know where it came from, and it like turns out to be right all the time. Or like very frequently. And again, it's like it plays into like my flow and that sense of ease. They tend to be like, that's not a thing. And I'm like, that's the
The
thing.
thing.
Like, make that the like center of your strategy because not everybody has that. And so that's kind of your superpower to build around.
I love that. That is so true too. It's like if it's not painful, we think it's not valuable, and we just stick with that mindset throughout the course of our career, beyond level one, which is so Wonderful just to hear you say and for everyone to really internalize this, that if the thing that feels the most fun, the thing that feels the easiest, the most aligned, that is the thing. That is your superpower. And so that is not a reason to start questioning, should I go and challenge myself in some other way that is not aligned with who you are? So thank you so much for sharing, everything and really how you work with your clients to help them solve for this question of should I stay or should I go, to help them understand really whether or not it's an aligned decision for them to move or to stay exactly where they are. And so I would love, where can people who are a part of the Breaking Free from the Grind tribe, how can they find you, connect with you, potentially work with you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can check out my website. It's pujavcoaching.com. That kind of shares a bit about my coaching approach, and you can book a consult call on there. We can chat further. I'm also on all the social platforms. I'm on Instagram at pujav.coaching. I'm also on Substack at pujav.substack.com, and I send email newsletters, kind of sharing these kinds of tips. And so all the links will be in the podcast description. But if you can think of a social media platform, I'm on it, and you can follow me on whichever is your platform of choice.
Love it. And I will make sure all of those are linked in the show notes so people can very easily find you and connect with you. Just before we close, and this has been such an amazing conversation, I'm so grateful to you. And hopefully it was as fun for you as it was for me to hear you talk through this. Just generally, because everyone tuning in is a high stress, high achiever, ourselves included, right? Um, if there was one piece of advice or one really insight or aha that you would want to share with a high stress, high achiever who's feeling like their career is not built around flow, what would that be?
It's so funny. I'll give the advice, which has always been the advice for me. And so like across all the coaches I've ever worked with, like whether it's a super expert coach or a newbie coach, whether it's a coach that has been coaching with me for a million years or is like talking to me for the very first time, my coaching always boils down to trust yourself.
Mm.
Just like again and again and again, that's what it boiled down to. And I remember I like chatted with a coach about this once, and I was kind of frustrated because I was like, the answer for me is always trust myself. And I still can't seem to trust myself. And like, what is my goddamn problem? Right. And I was like frustrated about it. And she said something so funny where she was like, Pooja, I just want you to know that's not the like final coaching answer for everybody. Like that's like so cool about you that your answer is like trust yourself, because like there's people in the world where that is absolutely not the answer for them. But I think like when it comes to high stress, high achievers, I think that is like really what it comes down to. You're so amazing as you are. The thing at the very
Mm.
core of you is incredible. And it doesn't need any forcing or discipline or willpower or structure to like become more incredible. It is incredible as it is. And so I think the final coaching answer for me is probably also the final coaching answer for you.
Yeah.
Trust your.
Hmm. Yes, and for everyone listening in. So, so
Yeah.
beautiful that you said that. That is the message that everyone needs to hear, myself included, yourself included. I'm sure just saying it to yourself again, right? So thank you so much for everything today. This has been incredibly helpful and I know so beneficial for the entire tribe that's tuning in.